Welcome to Drafting Out Loud, where today we look at the DraftKings market movers. You know the drill. Let's take a look at the platform values first. And believe it or not many players have changed on this list. Yesterday we had the number 2 or 3 wide receiver on Seattle with Rashid Shaheed. He's off the list. So that's the big change to this list. We do have some of or the rest are the same players, like I was saying, to quickly go over this. And so check out our prior video if you want to know my thoughts on some of this. But I do like the Brees Hall, Trevion Henderson. They're still both on there. We still have the rookie wide receivers in Tyson, Lemon, and Tate and Boston. We got some rookie running backs as well in Coleman and Love. And Bijan actually is on the list as a value. I guess he's falling to the second more often on or the second pick more often on DK versus on underdog. I mean, whatever. You really, it's hard to get value out of someone like Bijan. Even Genty, he's now going into the second round, which I think is great if you can get him there. Especially with them drafting some offensive linemen, having a new head coach. I think any changes that are happening are probably good changes for Ashton Genty, and I think he probably is a good pick. I was hoping to get him later, like end of the second round later or something like that, or at the beginning of the draft, but he actually never made it there really. Maybe he starts falling some more. I don't know why he would, but I don't know why he's fallen to 13. So I will take the fall on that whenever I can, especially if he gets a little further into the round. Other values, Sean Tucker's a value on DraftKings relative to underdog. I think this is more of like an underdog mistake probably than a DraftKings value, which is unique because oftentimes I'm saying that the other way around where I think it's a DraftKings mistake instead of an underdog value. But this case, I think this is just an underdog mistake right now on this one. So I don't think I'd really be wanting to take advantage of this one. I do want to take, and then Jonathan Taylor here, also another first round running back who you can get slightly later on DraftKings than on underdog. Uh, I I do want to take advantage, and I think this is probably maybe a mistake on both platforms. This is another underdog mistake, I think, with Brian Thomas. I don't know if it's a value yet on DraftKings or not, but it's definitely a mistake on underdog. They're just, who knows if he stays with Jacksonville, which is, it sounds like he's gonna. What is his role? Does it change somehow this year versus last year? Because if his role doesn't change at all, he's probably not paying off at either of these prices, right? So that's where I'm concerned there. I do think there are some values here. Like I like the idea of you can get Brees Hall in the fourth and then Trevion Henderson in the fifth, like we were talking about. I like the idea of trying to grab 1 or 2 of these rookie um, wide receivers at a discounted cost versus underdog. That way you can get some other more veteran players to solidify your team and then get these rookies and not get punished as much for them. Cardinal Tate here's made the list even at the bottom. He's a little bit of a value too. Let's take a look at the risers. So here are the risers. I just see Justin Jefferson on the bottom of the list here. He is now going. Yesterday he was picked 10 point something. Now he's picked 9 point something. So Justin Jefferson just keeps on going up. Will he surpass Amon Ra and or CeeDee Lamb? That's, I guess, the question right there. And momentum's a thing, like I'm saying. So I think he might. I was tempted to do it in one draft, but I didn't just because um, I don't want to force his ADP up. I'd rather get him later if I can at some point in time, which is not happening. But here, let's look at the rest of the risers. Some of these risers are just interesting to me. Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk. I mean, news by itself is causing these players to and then Tutu Atwell down here as well. These players are rising not because they're good picks, but just because they made the news. If Hollywood Brown going to Philadelphia forces him to 216, why were you not drafting him before he got signed by Philadelphia? Because the third wide receiver on Philadelphia has got to be the worst spot to be in. And even the second wide receiver on Philadelphia, if you're not a athletic freak like Devonta Smith or AJ Brown, um, probably a bad place to be. So I don't know how Hollywood Brown really pays off. I mean, I guess any player can pay off at this ADP, but I don't know why he's rising this much. Christian Kirk, he's going to be, potentially the slot wide receiver in San Francisco. Not, um, and so I'm more excited in him than I am in Hollywood Brown. But why wasn't he rising before? At least in San Francisco, they are throwing the ball a lot, so he does have a shot at getting some yards there. I think it's good if you're a fan of the other San Francisco wide receivers that Christian Kirk is more of a slot receiver, so he shouldn't take the role of the other receivers and shouldn't eat into it too much. Derek Carr is rising. I didn't see any news about Derek Carr in the last day, so I don't know if he's going to be signing somewhere. Um, it sounds like probably not, but maybe there's something going on that we got to look into here for Derek Carr. Chris Rodriguez is still rising, mainly because ETR said that Chris Rodriguez is probably the starter. And so I do think he's a decent pick here, just in the event that he is the starter. That being said, does he just get buried on the bench by Byshell Tootin? I guess would be the big concern. And I don't know, Tootin's a fourth round running back who is, for the most part, unpolished. He might not consistently give you what you need, even though he's the much more exciting back. And so maybe Chris Rodriguez does carve out a decent role no matter what, and maybe even a starter's role of some sorts. So I do think he's a good pick still at 150. Emmanuel Wilson, I think I'm still a fan around this price. That being said, it was nicer when it was closer to 200. But I still think that there's something there. If he was a good pick as the backup for Green Bay, why isn't he a good pick for the potential starter for part of the year for Seattle? Because he could have just as easily gotten kicked out of the backup role in Green Bay as he could have getting kicked out of the early starter role in Seattle. In fact, in Green Bay, Marshawn Lloyd is still there. And I know he's had injury problems, and I haven't clicked on him at all. And I feel like that's one of those picks where you don't click him at all, and then all of a sudden, it was the year you should have clicked him. So at some point in time, I'll probably click Marshawn Lloyd now that Emmanuel Wilson's not on the team. Jalen Waddle is the one we were looking for, and he is rising up the boards here to 54, 2.3% rise. What's funny, look at this. He was falling down boards a little bit for the week, but now he's rising back up. So there was a little bit of a dip. You had a chance before the trade. I got two other videos on my thoughts on Jalen Waddle. One was yesterday, and then I recorded like some additional thoughts yesterday, and I posted it this morning. So check those out. But what I can tell you, some newer news is that if you look at some of the bigger rankers, some of them have him all the way up in the late 20s, like 28. And so take that for what you want. I think that, like I was saying in the video, grab him when he falls in a draft. Not saying that have him fall past 54, but like have him, or I mean, not, yeah, I'd say grab him as he falls, knowing that he's usually going now in like the middle of the 40s, oftentimes, maybe even earlier. So if you can get him at a discount compared to the middle of the 40s or getting close, like I think I said in the video, close to his ADP, I think it makes sense to take him. That way you're kind of catching him a little bit at a little bit of a value, but you're not buying him at where he's going to end up, because I don't even know if he's much of a value here at 54, to tell you the truth. Again, some other people think that he's worth this and more. Keaton Mitchell still rising up the boards, 14% for the week, 2.3% for the day. Being in a Mike McDaniel's offense, maybe there's some exciting things to happen there. I think he is a pick in this area. Listen to some other drafters. It seems like anywhere, even like the 130s, but I'd say like the 150s, it makes sense. I think Keaton Mitchell, I think he's a risk at this point in time, personally, if you ask me. So I'm not overdrafting him. But again, similar to like Jalen Waddle, I don't want to be so overweight because I drafted him at like crazy prices. I just want to try to find the value where I can find it on someone like that. So if he goes into the late 150s or something like that, or just I guess maybe just the 150s, and I need a running back, I think he's definitely someone to consider. Kenneth Walker, like we were saying, getting close to that 1-2 turn, and he's basically there at pick the the second or third pick of the second round, and he looks like he's still moving up. 2% rise for the day. You'd think that's not over, and you're going to see this probably with a 13 at some point in time. Backup QB for Indianapolis, making his way onto the chart for some reason. Kendrick Bourne. Did I miss this? Did he get traded to? No, Kendrick Bourne. Okay. Sorry, I was thinking of Butte. But Bourne here signed, I guess, with Arizona, and so he's rising up the boards there just a little bit. I don't know how I feel about the maybe third wide receiver in Arizona, considering they have one of the best receiving tight ends as well. So you're not even saying like the third best pass catcher, maybe the fourth best pass catcher, possibly maybe the fifth best pass catcher if Connor comes back in his catch passes. Malik Willis making sense. He's now the number one in Miami, so you expect him to rise. Maybe he stays the number one, or he's the projected number one, but maybe even like Tutu Atwell's the number one in Miami or something like that. Or the former cowboy that's over there maybe is the number one or something like that, or maybe they draft someone. So there's some risk here. I wouldn't be overdrafting these players, but tacking on one of them at the end of the draft, especially if you took Malik Willis, I think makes sense. But I wouldn't be hammering them too much. I like this pick here. He's rising still, not as fast as you'd expect, I guess, compared to some of the other players. So I think Chig is a good value here at tight end. Dobbs, I think all the value's out on Dobbs, and he's still rising. So unless you have Drake May, I wouldn't be taking him. And I think at this point in time, pick 93, even if you have Drake May, I don't think you need to overdraft to give Romeo Dobbs. Go get Hunter Henry instead, would be my advice, because Romeo Dobbs might not even be the number one if things shake a certain way. While I think it's more likely that Hunter Henry just stays the number one tight end no matter what. So you get a player that is going way later than this, has a more likely outcome, like guaranteed outcome, compared to Romeo Dobbs. If you can get Romeo Dobbs around this price and there isn't anyone else of better value, I guess take him. But don't feel like you have to sacrifice other things for Romeo Dobbs. I wouldn't be. Let's look at our fallers here. Omari and Hampton falling. And I was listening to some other people talk, and I think there's two things maybe happening here, actually. One is Kenneth Walker has now passed him up, as you can see in the other chart. But that doesn't explain why he'd still be falling, I don't think, because he's overtaken him by like 2 picks. So is there concern that his role has changed now that they have Keaton Mitchell on the team? And maybe there's something there. Maybe there isn't something there. Omarion Hampton's pretty darn fast himself, and he's much bigger than Mitchell also. And Hampton is, he's not like the pass catcher that Achane is, but Hampton can catch a ball. So that's why he's probably falling. And I think that just gives you more value probably at some point in time, because what happens if he does become the running back that we kind of were expecting him to be, where he was going at the 1-2 turn? Well, if you get him in the middle of the second, thank you very much. That's kind of like getting Jonathan Taylor when he's going, or Saquon Barkley when he's going in the second round, but they end up being first round picks. So I do think that as he falls, just like any player, of course, they get more value as they fall. But you could see a path where he ends up being like a crazy value, league winner type of value if he just keeps on falling. It's kind of surprising that he's the biggest faller for the day, and you can see almost 10% for the week. I'm curious to see if that continues now that Kenneth Walker's easily surpassed him. Devon Achane falling, and I actually like Hampton, I think, more than Achane overall. And with everything else happening too, I think it makes sense that he's falling. That being said, there's talk of him maybe, being the next domino to fall as far as the trade goes. And if he does get traded, he then jumps right back up, maybe into the middle of the first round or something like that, depending on where he goes. Like, let's say, for example, he got traded to the Washington Commanders. Well, thank you very much. He rises up the boards again. Bucky Irvin falling. Now he's solidly in the third round here, and still falling. And my thoughts on this. Let him pick him. Force him into the fourth round, which he now is easier than ever, and then work to get unique combos where you can with them. I wouldn't be overdrafting him right now at all. I'd just be sprinkling him in probably, and just catch him as he falls to get like a unique team when there's nothing else that you like at that spot. Pat Bryant falling because they got Waddle makes sense. I wouldn't be taking him right. I still like him as a player. Like, look what he did last year, especially at the end of the year. He got some concussions, which is bad. Waddle's got some concussions as well, by the way. But he was making things happen, and he was getting targeted pretty good. So if you can get him falling, I think he's someone that you still want on your team if you can get him falling far enough. In fact, if you ask me, I think the most interesting Denver stack later on in the year might be to try to get a Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, Pat Bryant, J.K. Dobbins stack or something like that. That'd be a pretty big stack right there. But something like that might work based on how the ADPs are working out. And you might get the fallers in Pat Bryant, Cortland Sutton, and you might avoid a Jalen Waddle that doesn't do what everyone is hoping he does if he keeps on rising up the boards. Juwan Jennings falling. So let's see if the other Juwan Jennings is on here falling and Deebo Samuel's on here falling. I don't see Stephon Diggs on here, but these are your free agents that are falling right now, and I'd say take them when you can. I think they're fine picks. Like if we saw on this board Hollywood Brown rising, Christian Kirk rising as he gets a spot, Kendrick Bourne rising. If those players are rising, why wouldn't Juwan Jennings and Deebo Samuel or Stephon Diggs rise? You think they got to rise, and ideally return value on these costs. So I think they're good targets to go after. And I would have no problem filling my wide receiver room with a lot of these free agent wide receivers and just let the chips fall where they may. Also on this board are more Denver players: Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin. Cortland Sutton, I think, is going in the 70s in drafts. And I had mentioned in one of my videos, like pick 77 would be maybe an interesting point. That being said, other bigger rankers have put Cortland Sutton all the way at like 100. So maybe 77 is way too rich still. Troy Franklin should definitely be falling. And did Marvin Mims make the sheet? Marvin Mims probably just had such a low ADP already that he doesn't have much more to fall. Like he's got to fall a ton to show up on the sheet. But Troy Franklin falling as well. And I'd let right now both of these players fall. Even if you had a Denver stack going on, I don't think I'd try to take them at ADP. I'd let them both pass and assume that probably one of them at least makes it to me much later, not much later, but like at least a round later or more. I don't want to be over investing in those players. Even a round later is probably still too expensive for them overall. Jeremiah Love falling down the boards a bit. Some of that was because of the Walker stuff, but I don't know what else is going on that's making him fall, still fall. So maybe we see this stabilize for Hampton and Love and A Chain at this point in time as Walker does his thing. Vidal falling down the board because again they have Mitchell as a competition for that second back. DK, I think it makes sense that he's falling. Not someone I'm excited about because they now re-signed Calvin Ridley in addition to already signing in free agency Wan'Dale Robinson, who was kind of like taking his spot as that slot wide receiver. So DK should be falling more than this. I don't know why he's only got a 4% fall. Maybe he's so cheap and someone just wants to stack him every time or something like that. But I'm kind of passing on him in every draft for the most part. Even if I have a Tennessee stack, I think I'm like it's kind of disappointing a little bit. Like Iomanor and DK were interesting picks, and I don't know how interesting they are now. They're definitely not as interesting. Malik Willis falling down the board a little bit here. You can see that for the week, he's been rising the whole time. And you can see now for the week, he's still risen, but he's fallen for the day. So that the fall just in one day took out some of his rise. I guess he was slowing down as far as his rise goes. If he keeps on falling down the board, maybe there's some value there as a Justin Fields type of player. I think I mentioned that last time, maybe in a ride when he was rising, but like a Justin Fields type of player where you don't care if he's stacked or unstacked. The nice thing about Miami is that all his stacking partners at this point in time are way down the board anyways. So you can, if you need another wide receiver, you can just be like, okay, I'll just grab a Miami wide receiver at the end of the draft or something like that. Or even on you tight end, I can grab a Miami tight end at the end of the draft as well. So I do like the idea, as stupid as it sounds, I like the idea of Malik Wilson at some point in the draft, maybe even around this point. I'd be looking to try to take advantage of him falling as well, like try to push him around another round because he doesn't have a stacking partner and everyone's so down on Miami. Now's the time to the time to take him was before he got signed, and there might be another time to take him here at some point. Tony Pollard, I think Tony Pollard is a good pick. I thought he was a good pick when I got him at like 111 or something like that. I saw someone get him at like 120 in a draft where I couldn't draft another running back, and thank you is what I'd be saying to that. He either stays as the starter in Tennessee, or if he gets cut, is he the one that goes to someone like the Commanders? And then you're super excited about him being the starting running back on the Commanders. So there are our platform values, risers and fallers. I think there still are some values here at running back, like Tony Pollard. We also have Chris Rodriguez, Keaton Mitchell, and Emmanuel Wilson. And I'd even add to this, he's not on here, but like J.K. Dobbins as well on here. And so I do still think it makes sense to try to be smart with your running back capital early in the draft to try to get some interesting picks later on. I also think you can do that partially by grabbing some of the wide receiver value that you have earlier in the draft. And also another reason to try to delay your running backs is if you can try to get a Breece Hall and Trevion Henderson team by forcing other teams to maybe invest a little heavier in running back in the first 3 rounds so that you end up with Breece Hall and then Trevion Henderson falling to you for an interesting 1-2 punch, a cheaper 1-2 punch at running back. Let's jump into a DraftKings draft. After that, I'll be jumping into a DraftKings draft if there's one that's open after this. And let me know what you think. See you on the next one. Peace.